Hey you guys, and welcome back to our family channel. I thought it'd be really fun to go over how I'm gonna make my sourdough starter. So it's gonna be over a couple of days, so I'll be dressed in different clothes and stuff, but the first thing that you need is just a glass jar and a lid, but something that doesn't like lock in all of the air because it needs a little bit of air. So this is what I have. I have my glass jar, and then I just have like a reusable wax paper. No more chips. And a reusable wax paper. So that's what I'm gonna use. Hey, can you not, please? Thanks. So that's what I'm gonna use for our sourdough starter. There are two things that you're gonna need for your sourdough starter. I like the King Arthur Baking Company brand, but you're gonna need whole wheat flour. So this is the one that I have. And then you're just gonna need some water along with that. Okay, so for our sourdough starter, we're gonna be using our whole wheat flour, and we're gonna need 1 cup, and you're just gonna put that 1 cup in your jar. So I'm just gonna be using my glass jar and putting 1 cup of whole wheat flour. And again, I like using the King Arthur brand, so I'm gonna do that. Okay, so I used the King Arthur whole wheat flour, but you could also use the King Arthur pumpernickel flour. I like whole wheat flour, and that's what I had on hand. And so I have my 1 cup of that, and I'm gonna add cool water, a 1/2 cup of cool water to my flour, and then that'll be it for day 1. So. So part of the directions was to mix in the water to the whole wheat flour, and they want you to mix it in so that there's no dry flour remaining. And so I stirred in my 1/2 cup of water to my 1 cup of whole wheat flour, and I just mixed it a lot to try and make sure that there was absolutely no dry flour, that it's all together and all wet. So now that I have it all put together, I'm gonna put my lid on it, and I'm just gonna let it sit in a warm spot for 24 hours, and then I'll be back tomorrow to show you what I do for step 2. All right, day 2, I just grabbed this out of the pantry, and I'm gonna add what I need to add to it. Day 2 of our sourdough starter, and you may see some activity, you may not see some activity. So for mine, it doesn't really look like there's any activity yet. What you're wanting to do is, regardless of activity or no activity, you're wanting to take out your full starter, and you're gonna cut it in half, and then you're gonna toss away or throw out half of it, and then you're just gonna keep half of it to add on to. So here is my starter so far, and I'm just gonna cut it in half. Okay, and I can feel that it's been active. So I'm gonna put the other half of it back into my jar, and I'm just gonna take this and I'm gonna go throw it away. I'm just gonna discard it. Okay, so I have half of my skillet, or my starter, and it's asking me to add a half cup of water, and since my house is a little bit on the cooler side, I'm just using lukewarm water. If your house is on the warmer side, you can use just like room temperature cold water. So half a cup, I'm gonna add that in. And then what it's wanting me to do is add 1 cup of unbleached all-purpose flour. So we started with our whole wheat flour. I don't need that. I have bread flour to make the bread, but I don't use that. And then I have unbleached all-purpose flour. So this is what I'm adding. So I need to have 1 cup, and it tells me that my 1 cup is gonna be 113 grams. So in order to measure this, instead of using like a measuring cup, I'm actually gonna use a bowl and a scale, and I'm gonna measure 113 grams to be precise. So I've measured out 113 grams, and now I'm gonna add it to my starter, which I already have my water in it. You want to mix it really, really well so that it's all mixed in there. Can you see that? You just want to mix it really well so everything is really, really well incorporated together. I'm gonna put my lid back on, which it's not an airtight lid. It's just gonna allow the water or the air to still get in there so that it can do its thing. And you're gonna put it back in the pantry or somewhere where it's dry for 24 hours, and you're just gonna let it do its thing, and then I'll come back tomorrow and tell you what to do on day 3. So that's it for day 2. Go ahead and put it somewhere where it can rest for 24 hours. Good morning, day 3. Let me get my directions. Okay, so it says that today we are supposed to do 2 feedings instead of 1. So I'm gonna grab my starter and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is my starter. You can't really see it really well, but if I go like that, you can see that it's become a little bit more active. So what it says to do today is to do 2 feedings, 12 hours apart. So it's 7 a.m. And then I'll do that once today, and then I'll do it once later today as well. Okay, so I need to grab my scale and my all-purpose flour and some water. Okay, so it says, sorry, so low here. It says that you need to measure out 113 grams of your starter. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure out 113 grams of my starter. So it's really not that much. That was 113 grams, and it says to discard the rest of it, which I'm kind of like, I don't want to discard the rest of it because more starter means that I'm gonna have like more to make sourdough. But if I kept all of it, I wouldn't have space for all of it. So that is 113 grams, and this is the rest of it. It's still a lot, but I'm gonna throw it out because I'm just following instructions word for word. so now I just measured out 113 grams of my all-purpose flour, unbleached all-purpose flour, and I'm gonna add it to my starter.
Mommy, can I help you?
Not right now, buddy, but thank you for
What are you making?
I'm just making a starter for sourdough.
For Koa?
No, for all of us. When I'm actually gonna make the bread, you can help me.
Sourdough.
You like sourdough?
Wait.
Okay, now that I have my sourdough starter on the bottom, I have my 113 grams of unbleached all-purpose flour. I'm gonna add a half cup of lukewarm water to it. And then I'm just gonna stir it up and mix it all up. Okay, so now with our starter, let's see if I can focus in here. I just wanted to make sure that I got all the flour incorporated and nothing was dry. So I just wanted to make sure that everything is wet, and that's all I'm gonna do for this portion. And I'll come back today again for another feeding, but in the meantime, I'm just gonna cap it. I'm gonna put my lid on it again and put it away in the cupboard. Man, it is 7 p.m. and I almost forgot. I need to do this really quick. So my second feeding of the third day, so it's the first day of having 2 feedings. And it says I need to measure out 113 grams of my unbleached all-purpose flour, and then I need to measure out 113 grams of my starter. You're gonna discard the rest of it, and then you're gonna add your 113 grams of your flour to your starter, and you're adding a half cup of water. And then you're gonna mix it all together, and then you're just gonna let it sit overnight. We're done for day 3, and it's just gonna sit overnight, and then we'll come back in the morning time for feeding it again. Your banana. You can start to see the bubbles and how it's aerating. See? That's good. All right. Okay, it's day 4 of our starter. We teared out our scale. We have it in grams. Now I'm going to measure out 113 grams of our starter, and I'm going to discard the rest. Like day 4, feed 1, and I'm gonna put the lid back on and put it back in the pantry until later today, maybe 11 hours later, 12 hours later, to do a second feeding. So right now it's about right here, and it's gonna rise and then it'll fall. Got my lid on and back in the pantry it goes. Day 5, and I got distracted by my kids and forgot to film the rest. But I did this one a little bit different because I knew that on day 6 that the starter would be ripe enough that I would want to make sourdough. And so today, for the first feeding, I didn't discard any of my starter. I just added 113 grams unbleached all-purpose flour and 113 grams of water. I measured it on my scale today to make sure that I was getting the correct amount. And initially it said 113 grams or a half cup water. I wanted to be precise. So from here on out, I'm just going to measure it 113 grams of water on my scale. I added it, put it in the pantry to come back later that night. So day 5, second feeding, I had a lot more starter, and it was actually overflowing from the jar that you can see. I separated 113 grams of the starter into that new container, and then I measured 113 grams and put that in my glass container. So that way I would have a completely different starter to use for my bread, and I would still have starter to keep making more starter and have it age more so that I could make sourdough. Welcome back to day 6, where I realized that I'm very messy when I am baking and measuring things out, and my scale had a ton of flour on it. So silly me, not thinking super early in the morning, oh yes, let's wash our scale before we use it. That would be very smart. I ended up washing it without thinking about what I was doing, and water got into the actual scale part and it ruined my scale. It made it so that it wouldn't work, and I took it out, the batteries out, tried to fix it, and the water was still in the actual scale part. And so when I tried to tear it, it just said error. When I tried to switch units, it said error. It didn't work because I washed it and water got inside, and oh my goodness, I wasn't thinking. Anyways, you learn from your mistakes, and if you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at? I
I will not be doing that in the future. I am going to have to buy a new scale, and instead of keeping the extra starter that I made, I'm just gonna end up making extra sourdough. So my house will be filled with yummy sourdough instead. And now I've learned not to wash my scale with the sink water.
Okay, so silly me, I started the dishwasher because I needed to get some dishes done to clear my space. I wanted to have a clean space in order to make our sourdough. So hopefully you can hear me all right. And since I'm going without a scale, I have to just measure it and hope that it's measured correctly. 1 cup of sourdough starter, 1.5 cups lukewarm water. We're also using instant yeast, even though you don't have to with most recipes. The recipe that I'm using is for a rustic sourdough, and it says just to include the instant yeast so that you can't go wrong. I don't want to go wrong. So we're using the instant yeast. I'm needing 2.5 teaspoons of salt and 5 cups of unbleached all-purpose flour. Salt. Flour. Okay, so weigh your flour, measure it gently by spooning it into a cup. So it actually says that, it says to weigh your flour, and it says, or measure it by gently spooning it into a cup. So I'm gonna be gently spooning it into a cup, and then sweeping off any excess, and then to combine it all of the ingredients, and then knead to form a smooth dough. So I'm gonna use my KitchenAid with the dough hook, and I'm gonna add all of my ingredients. Hope it works out. Okay, so since I had to combine all of my ingredients, instead of just plopping them on top of my flour, I'm actually gonna make a well in the middle. So that way when they do get incorporated into the flour, that it's not just gonna be on top and then take a while for it to get to the bottom. So I'm making a well, you know, just separating, making a hole in the middle. So that way I can put all of my added ingredients right there. So that way when I start to mix, everything will just get easily incorporated into my flour. For this specific recipe that I'm using, it calls for 1 to 2 teaspoons of instant yeast. And so that's about just 1 packet. So you can just open this up and put it in without measuring, because that's the exact amount that they want. It's just 1 packet of the instant yeast. Calls for kneading, and I want to actually knead my dough, which I'll show you in just a second. I just wanted to combine all of my ingredients first. So I'm gonna take all of this over to this surface over here, but I want to clean that surface real quick, and then I'll show you. I just lightly greased my bowl. I'm gonna put my dough in and I'm gonna let it rise. For the sourdough to rise, I'm actually going to do some stuff for homeschool. I'm creating a new calendar station. So it says next that we're gently divide the dough in half. Pre-shape each piece of dough by pulling the edges into the center, turning it over to the seam is on the bottom, and rolling it under your cupped hands to form a ball. Let the dough rest covered for 15 minutes.
Can I take this?
This is our dough. It's doubled in size. And we're gonna cut it in half.
Big block.
So we divided the dough into two separate pieces. I have them both right here. I shaped them into balls of dough. You're silly little girl. And then I greased the bottoms of the pans with a little bit of olive oil, covered it with some cling wrap, and covered it with our towel. And now I'm gonna let it sit for 15 minutes for both of them. Timer went off. Now it says to place the loaves on a lightly greased or parchment lined baking sheet.
Okay, so we put both of our balls of dough on parchment paper on a baking sheet, and we covered it with saran wrap or cling wrap, and then with a towel so that it was in a dark environment, and we let it sit for 1 hour. When that hour was up, we took a spray bottle and filled it with lukewarm water and sprayed just one of the sourdough balls, and then we took our all-purpose flour and generously dusted it all over the dough. For this next part, you're just gonna take your serrated bread knife and you're gonna score your bread. It says just to do 2 diagonals, but I had a little bit more fun with it. And then I just took my parchment paper and put it in my Dutch oven. I did trim down my parchment paper just because it was really long, but you don't have to do that. Then I set the timer for 25 minutes, and when the timer went off, I took the lid off of the Dutch oven to brown the top of the loaf to be golden.
Oh yeah, buddy. Okay, so this was my 5th, 6th time making sourdough. I'm still a beginner. I still make mistakes, obviously. I made the mistake of washing my scale and ruining it.
Nope, no mistakes, it's perfect.
But mistakes aside, my bread turned out amazing. Made a wonderful grilled cheese for lunch. It tasted fabulous. Melted some butter while we waited for the grilled cheese and slathered it on some sourdough and ate it. It tasted so good. So I've learned from my mistakes. Don't wash a scale. I've made sourdough 4 or 5 times before, and every time you learn something new. Like this time I was kneading my bread for, I did it for 8 minutes, and it was great. Like, it's a lot of work kneading, and I had just cleaned my surface, but I saw somewhere that like having a wood surface makes it a little bit easier, and so I tried that, and my surface was moving everywhere. So next time I'm just gonna do it again on my countertop. What else? Oh, I don't have a scraper, and so like I makeshift, like use what I have, which is totally okay if you're trying to save money, like me. But in the future, I would love to get a scraper. I think that would make it a lot easier. But again, just using what I have, and that's totally okay. I don't have to have a scraper. So I ended up using a kale stripper as a scraper because it had a side that did exactly what a scraper would do. So I used just some bowls, and I used some light olive oil so that it wouldn't stick when it was rising. It'd be really great if you had those sourdough baskets for them to sit in. Those are phenomenal. I've seen them, and I feel like it would be really helpful, but you don't need it. So trying to save money, I'm using what I have, and ended up working out great. It tasted phenomenal. It tasted great. So I just used what I had. I didn't need anything fancy or special, and I hope that you know that you don't need it either. If you are curious about what's behind me, you can go and watch this video that I have made. I was gonna make them into one video, but it ended up being too much time, so I'm separating them. So if you see like little bits throughout the video of this other video, it's because I did it on the same day. I'm making this for homeschool. This one is for sourdough. So I hope that you have good luck with your sourdough from start to finish, making your starter and making your dough, and that you enjoy it. And I hope that you make it again and again and again. So cheers to sourdough, and I hope that you guys have a great day. Bye.